Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to give it just one more minute for others to log in, and then we'll begin. Thank you. Okay, I have 9 a.m. Central Time, so we'll go ahead and be respectful of everybody's time and get started. Appreciate everybody joining us today. I know we're all been wondering what's going on with the H-2B cap relief for the first half of the fiscal year and for the second half of the fiscal year for 2026, since we do not have an announcement now. So very appreciative of Lori joining us. And there's been many things going on in DC, and she's been in the middle of all that. So it'd be very helpful for her to have a conversation with all of you today and let you know what we've been working on, what we've been hearing, and then I'm going to go over a few slides, just kind of let you know what to expect next in regards to your H-2B filing and what we're working on your behalf. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lori. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Arnulfo. Thanks for having me. And thank you all for not only being on this call, but every time Arnulfo reaches out for, reaching out to your elected officials, your member of Congress, your two senators. We got some of our members from South Dakota to meet with the Senate Majority Leader Thune's office. I think we are all in a frustrating place with where we are, that there's been no announcement about supplemental visas at this point yet. But we are a lot closer than we would be to getting supplemental visas released if it wasn't for all of our members and all of the constant outreach. So thanks for that. So just so everyone knows where we stand, when Congress passed a bill, a continuing resolution to reopen the federal government after a 41-day government shutdown, the authority for the administration to release supplemental visas was extended as part of that bill. So we have been working very hard as FEWA and also through the H-2B Workforce Coalition. Arnulfo is the co-chair of that coalition. We've been working hard to get those visas released. So a couple different activities that FEWA and the coalition has engaged in. We've asked all of you to reach out to your elected officials, and we had 2 letters from Congress go to the administration. I understand those letters have gotten a lot of attention because we had a third of the Senate. For example, on the Senate letter, you don't get a third of the Senate to agree on anything, but we had a third of the Senate reaching out to the administration saying, we need you to release all of these supplemental visas, about close to 65,000 supplemental visas, as quickly as possible. Do what you've done the last several years. So that was really helpful. We followed that up with a big H-2B Workforce Coalition Grass-LaRouche letter, which most of your organizations signed on to, along with FEWA. And we put out a press release and have gotten some press attention talking about the need for the visas and the fact that 2,200 businesses have written to the administration talking about the importance of this to the survival of their industries. So where we stand right now is the administration, we know the request for these supplemental visas that decision is pending and on the Secretary of Homeland Security's desk. There's been a lot of other things that have been distracting the administration, making them maybe move a little slower just in the visa space, not specific to H-2B. But we continue to do everything we can to push for those visas as quickly as possible. I wish I could tell you that they're imminent and we expect an announcement, before the holidays, but I think we want to be realistic that we don't know how quickly we can get any kind of announcement or what it will be at this point. But we know that is very much in the conversation. We're doing everything we can to push that needle, including having some specific members of Congress that are well placed to be pushing, going directly to the White House and the administration. So that includes, for example, like I mentioned, a group of our members from South Dakota met with the South Dakota senators. Just a reminder, Senator Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, is from South Dakota, as is the Secretary of Homeland Security, who is the former governor of South Dakota and a member of Congress from South Dakota. So trying to push any different angles we can to get those visas released. We want to have cap relief for our members as quickly as possible. And I know our new is going to talk about the timing and why this is so critical. Separate from that conversation, Congress is continuing to work through the annual appropriations bills that fund the federal government. They fund the federal government starting October 1st. We don't ever usually have that deadline met, and we have a series of temporary spending bills that keep the government open or have a government shutdown, as we saw last month. But when Congress gets to work on those appropriations bills, there is an opportunity for pushing, and we are continuing to, as a separate track, also continue to work on appropriations language. So the Homeland Security Appropriations Bill that was passed by the House Appropriations Committee does have certified seasonal employer language in there that would provide cap relief directly to employers like our members who have used the program during any of the last 5 years. Whether you've gotten your workers or not, as long as you had a labor certification for those workers, it would provide cap relief. Do I think in the middle of controversial discussions over all appropriations bills, we can get that through the end of the signed into law? Maybe not, but could we get some language like the discretionary language that would be a little more directive and take some of the discretion out of that? I think that's what we're hoping at the end of the day. Whatever form it takes, we get something that takes this decision time frame out of the Department of Homeland Security, which is what is slowing down us getting those visas and giving you that uncertainty about the number of visas. So pushing very hard on two tracks. One is, and probably most priority because it is the thing that can be done right now in absence of a big spending bill, is getting those supplemental visas so we know what the path forward is. And as our members are having to look at making decisions, if they applied for the first half cap, looking at second half cap, but all of those things is of paramount importance. But we're not forgetting the end game of, can we get something better in the law that takes away some of this discretion from Homeland Security? So we're starting to push there. And that's where things stand right now. Arnulfo, I don't know if you have anything you want to add, or if we want to take any questions or move on to the next part.
I think, Laura, if you can kind of explain a little bit about how we have the authority to release the visas now and how that could be different on what we're working on for the next deadline of January 31st, kind of the May to shall and those types of things.
Sure. So right now, because we have a temporary spending bill that's keeping the government open through January 30th, it extends anything that was in the law for last fiscal year. So for fiscal 2025, which ended on September 30th, it had the discretionary authority for the Secretary of Homeland Security, in consultation with the Secretary of Labor, to release 64,716 up to 64,716 supplemental visas. That authority was continued through January 30th. So we are pushing to get that done now before January 30th. We wanted it weeks ago. We are pushing that this is a critical time. We need Homeland Security to do this now. Separately, sometime at January 30th, or if it's extended through another temporary spending bill, Congress is going to have to do annual spending bills that fund all the different federal departments in the federal government. And as part of that, we're hoping that we get some language on H-2B, that cap relief, that it not only extends, that doesn't just take the current language on supplemental visas that gives that authority to the Secretary of Homeland Security, but that takes away some of that discretion, that by saying, like, instead of you may release these additional visas, you must release these additional visas, or looks at a new cap relief formula, such as the certified seasonal employer language that would provide cap relief to the employer if you've used the program over the last 5 fiscal years, the highest number of visas that you've used in any of those fiscal years that you were certified for by the Department of Labor, whether or not you got them because of the cap, but that you were certified for, you would be able to hire workers exempt from the cap for that number. So we're working on all those paths for the long-term spending bill, but in the next, 2 or 3 weeks, the really critical time for having to make decisions, business decisions about what to do with your pending applications. We are really pushing really hard to get those supplemental visas, but we're doing both simultaneously, just in different tracks, with a real focus on the critical timing right now of those supplemental visas.
Perfect. Thank you. Before we continue, if you have any questions, please, utilize the question and answer box. Jamie's online. She's monitoring those. Happy to answer as many as we can. If you'd like to ask a question, just use your raise hand option, and Jamie can unmute your mic and you can ask a question live. Before I go into kind of dates and decisions, Lori, do you want to explain a little bit about, is this the difference between the Trump administration, Trump first term administration, and now against the Biden administration, the most recent cap relief we received, and kind of how that played out to date?
Sure. So we has been pushed for many years for returning worker exemption, exempting returning workers from the cap. And at one point, about 2016, 2017, it became harder and harder politically to get that done. There's just so much more attention on visa and immigration issues. And Congress put into law, instead of something simple like a returning worker exemption, this authority that gives the Department of Homeland Security the discretion to release up to about 65,000 additional visas each year. It is discretion on how many visas and if those visas are released. During the first Trump administration, the first time we saw this in law was for 2018. And in 2018, the Trump administration at the time released 15,000 supplemental visas. And those were broken out on a kind of scale of first half cap, second half cap, only for returning workers, and a tranche of visas that were set aside for Northern Triangle countries, which was Guatemala, El Salvador, and not Haiti. It was
it Costa Rica was added later too?
Yeah, it was Costa Rica.
I think it was fun.
So we had these supplemental visas, and then the first year in the Trump administration in 2018, we got 15,000. In 2019, the Trump administration came back and released 30,000 supplemental visas. And then in 2020, the administration was going to release 35,000 supplemental visas. And then COVID hit and the pandemic and the world shut down. We were able to preserve bringing in H-2B workers on a national security exemption, but there wasn't really a need for those supplemental visas, and the administration said, we're not issuing them because we're in the middle of this massive pandemic. Coming out of the pandemic, as the economy recovered, we really needed those visas again. And so then in 2023, the Biden administration released, the full 65,000 supplemental visas. And then in 2024, for fiscal year 25, the Biden administration released again those full 65,000 supplemental visas, and did it in a really nice way, that it was done in October with a rule that was done early. So in October, we knew the rules of the game. It made it a lot easier for everyone's planning, predictability, knowing what the rules of the game were. The Trump administration came in last year in January. On January 20th, the president was sworn in. Those 65,000 visas and the regulations that put them in place were already out there, but there was still a question. The administration put a rule on all regulations as it reviewed them. And there was a question, would the Trump administration allow those additional visas that were set aside just for the second half cap to move forward? Ultimately, they did. There was some review. We did a lot of grassroots outreach, a lot of shoe leather lobbying, a lot of letters to the administration. And ultimately, the Trump administration just let those visas continue to be released according to the schedule that was laid out in the Biden administration. But in the second Trump administration, this is the first fiscal year where the discretion to release those visas is fully in the Trump administration. And there's a lot of due diligence, a lot of conversations that are happening within the White House, within Homeland Security about these supplemental visas. I think we'll get there, but we are pushing really hard because we would have liked to have those visas released back in October when that authority was actually, it couldn't have been extended until we got out of the government shutdown. But as soon as we got out of the government shutdown and that authority was extended, we wanted these supplemental visas out there. And so we're pushing still to get them as quickly as possible, but that's where we stand right now.
Great. Thank you, Lori. So I'm going to go into kind of timing and what to expect next and what we're doing. Please, again, if you have any questions, send those over while I go through this information and we'll address those. We should have a few minutes to address as many questions as we have. So what's happening next? Mostly, if you're in the first half of the fiscal year, you may have some decisions to make and you may not be used of dealing with these type of dates because we've been successful in getting those supplemental visas for the first half for the past several years. If you're in the second half of the fiscal year, there's nothing new that you need to do. Just know that the second half of the fiscal year will be flooded with applications from the first half since we do not have cap relief right now. So what we're going to do and what we've already do, all your guides are online as well, but they have already duplicated your first half application to be prepared and filed on January 1st. We have to file those April 1st applications between January 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, which is the filing window for that April 1st start date. And so we have everything we need on our end to duplicate that application, get it filed on a timely basis, in order for you to be able to get a group assignment. The U.S. Department of Labor is going to randomize all applications that were submitted within that 3-day window and assign groups. And we start getting those group assignments between January 4th and January 8th. And historically, the Department of Labor will release a public announcement around January 9th, issuing, sending out a spreadsheet of all the applications they received and what group they were assigned in. So if you have a first half application, we're going to need to make some decisions because this is the time frame of we do not expect cap relief to be done by January 1. That's why we have your second application prepared and ready to file. Many of the administration and Congress are going to start going home for the holidays. If we didn't have anything done by today, this is what we expected. So we are prepared for that. So obviously, Group A is the golden ticket here, and that gives you first opportunity to the 33,000 visas that are available, regardless of what happens with supplemental visas. But this NOA date range, which stands for the Notice of Acceptance, this means when the U.S. Department of Labor starts working on these Group A applications. This is the permission to start your U.S. domestic recruitment. And then looking at the labor cert date range, this is when we start getting the final certification before we file those filing fees to CIS. That's where the cap is counted. So the 33,000 quota was met on March 5th of fiscal year 2025 for the second half of the fiscal year. So you'll see that all of Group B even made the quota for FY 2025 second half. That is, I don't know if that will change with the first half of the supplemental visas not available, but we'll definitely see. But just keep these dates in mind because we will be following up with anybody who has a first half application with a. This is an example of what we had to do back in 2022 because we didn't have cap relief before January 1st. You'll get an urgent, we're going to start sending these out actually before the holidays so you can start considering because a business decision is going to have to be made. And these numbers are, like I said, this is an example from 2022, but just wanted to show you an e-signature document with two options because if you're a first half February 1st or March 1st start date and we start getting group assignments on January 4th and you get a Group A application, you have first opportunity of making the quota for 33,000 visas, but you still have a first half case pending at the U.S. Department of Labor. The Department of Labor is not going to allow two applications to be certified at the same time or processing at the same time. So we'll either we will have to withdraw your first half application and proceed with the Group A immediately, because we have to get that done prior to this NOA date range before the Department of Labor starts processing your applications. And they could start earlier than January 13th. This is just how early they started releasing those after the group assignments this year. So we're going to give you, probably all the way up until January 4th, looking at, that being a Sunday, to make that decision if you get a Group A. If you get a Group B, C, D, or G all the way through, you don't have to make that immediate decision. But it does become a business decision at that point, because come January 13th, we'll just use this date. If we don't have supplemental visas issued by that point and you have a February 1st start date and you get a Group A assignment, yes, it's more certainty that you're going to get those 33,000 visas. You can, there's no limitations in the regards of returning workers or workers coming from a certain country, because it can be a mix of all. There's no limitations there, but you'll also be forfeiting 1 or 2 months of your spring season, because you will not be able to start employment for those workers until April 1st. So that's why it becomes a decision, and it's only, urgent as if you get a Group A. So you will be seeing, one of these documents coming across from your FEWA guide as early as next week, kind of laying it out and timing wise, and letting us know is if you want to, and you don't have to let us know before the holidays, but we want to give you plenty of time to receive this and read what's going on. But like I said, we will want to know by January 4th before we start getting those group assignments, because if we do not withdraw in time and you have two applications pending, we will receive a notice of deficiency on that Group A assignment and potentially a denial if we don't respond on a timely basis. And that just further delays and could cost you missing the first half of the quota, even with the Group A assignment. So we want to act immediately. So that's why it's important. And again, this is really just for first half CAP members. For second half, all we're going to be doing is, getting your group assignment. There's nothing else you need to do at this time. And we have all updated requirements from you to file that second application as well. But just keep that in mind. That's going to be coming across the desk from your FEWA guide. So you can start thinking about, if we do get a Group A assignment, how do we want to proceed, not knowing, if we have cap relief. Now, if cap relief is issued first week of January, it's going to be a tougher decision, but we already have many February 1st certifications in place, to where if CIS was to release those visas and say we can file on January 1st, then we're prepared as well to file those to immigration. So we'll definitely keep you up to date on what's going on and giving you all options, but we want to know where you're at with that e-signature document, so we know how to proceed. And if anything changes prior to then, we'll definitely reach out personally and let you know accordingly to make that final decision. So that's what's going to happen here in the near future. Again, we have everything we need on our end to give you opportunity in both halves of the CAFs, and we're gonna take that as long. We're gonna start with the Group A's only. We know we have normally until February, the beginning of February, until Department of Labor starts working on the Group E applications. And if we still don't have cap relief at that point, hopefully we do in the month of January, where you can still take advantage of first half filings with labor certifications we have in place. But then we'll start sending out, Group B decisions to make if you do, if we have that Group B and you want to proceed and withdraw your first half application. So with that, I knew we may have some questions. Jamie, I'm going to turn it over to you. We still have Lori on the line as well, so happy to talk about filing strategy. If it's too specific, I'll follow up with you after the call, but happy to go through all your questions.
We do have a couple. What happens if they release the first half supplemental visas after second half lottery? Are those supplemental visas for the whole year?
They will most likely be for both halves of the fiscal year. If we get supplemental visas that are issued in January, they will be divided up into first half and second half, most likely. It's administration's decision, how they release those visas. But historically, if it's released in that early, then we will still be able to take advantage of filing for the first half of the fiscal year, even after the group assignments are assigned, because those are going to start coming out January 4th.
Will there be a late May 15th start date option?
Again, this is the Department of Homeland Security's decision on how they release the visas, but they have been doing that late third quota as well, historically. So it just depends on the number of visas that they release. They do not have to release the full 64,716. We would like them to, and that's our ask, obviously, but it's going to be the Department of Homeland Security decision on how many they release and how they divide those up. And just remember, if there is a May 15th option, that is something that we have to refile for in January timeframe, 90 days prior to May 15th. So we will be prepared to do that as well if that option is available. Any other questions, Jamie?
That looks like all. Oh, someone raised their hand.
Perfect. Go ahead, Jody.
Hold on, let me unmute her. Jody?
Looks like she's still on mute. Jody, if you have a question, you can unmute your mic now and then ask your question, or you can send it through the Q&A, either way. We will be recording, the meeting has been recorded. We'll be sharing that as well. I know that question come across for those who could not attend live, and you can share it with your colleagues. So we'll be sending that out as soon as the recording is available.
Do you have another question that came in?
Okay.
If we have a labor cert for December 1st start date and July 15th end date, and we opt to apply for second half and fall into group A or B, does season dates change or will end on July 15th?
That's a great question. Yes, your end date will remain the same, just because the workers are arriving late based on cap availability. That does not change the seasonal nature of your business and the repetitive nature of your business. So the end date will remain the same regardless of when the workers arrive. We'll give it one more minute, Jamie, see if any other questions come in. I'm not sure if Jody was able to. Looks like he got another hand up.
I do have another question. Are these 64,716 supplemental visas applicable to the full 2026 fiscal year or just half?
Go ahead, Lori.
Yeah, I was just going to say, kind of repeat what Arnulfo said. If we go under the assumption that the administration will follow the same formula that it has every time past supplemental visas have been released, there would be a set amount of visas for returning workers from the first half cap, a set aside of a certain number of visas for returning workers for the second half cap, a kind of carve out for Northern Central American countries, and a set aside of late season filers, that post May 15th returning worker thing. So we're going under the assumption that the same thing will be done as in the past. But until we see something out in writing from the administration, that's all we can do is make that assumption.
In normal procedure, the Department of Homeland Security will send out a kind of a press release on how they plan on doing that, and it kind of goes through the Federal Register process on a filing date on when we can start filing for those applications, and the number on how they plan on dividing that up as well.
Lynn, did you have a question?
Looks like Anna has a question as well. Go ahead, Anna, if you're on mute. Okay. Any other questions in the Q&A, Jamie?
No.
We'll give it one more minute. See if anybody can. All right. Well, Lori, thank you very much for your time. I know we're going to continue the pressure. We wish we had better news with cap relief announcements prior to the holidays, but we're going to keep working hard on our end. I know you will as well inside the loop. Lori, we greatly appreciate everything you and your team are doing on behalf of FUA membership. And again, like Lori mentioned, if and when we send out another grassroots alert about contacting your member, sending an email, making a phone call, every email, every phone call is important. So we appreciate everybody who acts on those call to actions because it's very important. We're going to continue the pressure. We're definitely not going to go quiet, in regards to the administration to get this done in January to give us all opportunities for both first half and second half cap.
Thank you for having me, Arnulfo. Hope everyone enjoys the holidays, and hopefully we'll have some good news to share in the not too distant future.
Perfect. Thank you, Lori. If you did not get to your question for some reason, please reach out to me directly or your FEWA guy. I'd be happy to help. We'll be here as well next week. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lori.